Hey there guys, Spazzy Dragon here, aka Syndromes, and welcome to this little video. Let me tell you a name. Moonbase Alpha Logic. So, as a person I actually have a very poor memory, especially when it comes to names, which kinda sucks if I am asked what kind of music I listen to. But when it comes to disco, I will always remember this name, because if not for this one person flying this one character 12 years ago today in the late 2007, I would have never gotten into disco as my first community. Again, I have a very bad memory as a person, so the exact context of how I met this guy is somewhat blurry, but I do remember he was flying a Hegemon at the time. Disco was version 4.84, and it just came out, and I was as new as you could be. My character name was, surprisingly, Syndromes, and at the time I didn't even know that we had a forum or what a forum was even used for, or that we have a wiki for that matter. I spent most of my time in New York, mostly because I didn't really know the game map at all. Again, I would play through the single-player campaign only 2 years afterwards. And what I would do, I would just get into fights with both NPCs and players, which ended up exactly as you might think they would, considering I was playing a Starflyer, but I mostly just talked to people and just watched them roleplay. So I do distinctly remember that I did not really care about getting a better ship or progressing, because I kept remembering how slowly I was making credits over time by shooting scrap and shit. So you can kind of imagine when a dude in what was at the time the Ajira bomber said that that thing cost 6 million credits, my eyes would just glaze over and I was like, yeah. So, Moonbase Alpha stands out simply by the ship that he flew. It looked so unique, so strange, and that's obviously because I hadn't been to Tau 23 yet, I hadn't seen the stationary mining ships. And when I asked him where he got it and how much it cost, instead of telling me the price outright, he just told me that, oh yeah, it's easy enough to, follow me and I'll show you. And so I did. If you're subscribed to my channel, you probably know that most of my disco-related videos are either tutorials, guides, or the combination of both disguised as a Let's Play. And the way that I portray the progression in those Let's Plays is kind of, I think, rational. You start off with mining, you grab a bigger ship, you get to trade, you run ore, etc. But I can't even stress enough how chaotic my own progression was when in comparison with this. And the more I think about it, I'm starting to realize that perhaps making progression too easy and too linear is somewhat problematic. Because the sense of achievement that you get from figuring out something on your own is a huge thing. Moonbase Alpha allowed me to kind of just tag along as he flew Boron from Pittsburgh to New London, and he would pay me as a security escort $500,000 per run. Though, of course, me being the dumbass newbie, I just kind of flew alongside him, so whatever he met a pirate, he would either pay or we would both die. But one thing he always did, or rather he didn't do, was that he didn't tell me what to do with the credits. When it comes to ships, he simply told me to get whatever looks good, and he would be very patient as to wait for me to dock on every base I wanted to, and explore, and that's pretty much how I ended up with a spatial that I purchased off the battleship whatever in Dublin. And I was genuinely happy with that experience. That ship defined my first year of disco. I only flew that ship, like it was Syndrome's ship. I didn't even let it go even though it was kind of crap. He helped me a lot by answering the questions I gave him, but I honestly don't remember him ever trying to handhold me through disco. If I had a question, he would answer them, but everything else was kind of up to me. But even more so, I remember I would always log in and check if he was around to join me on his trade routes to, explore disco and stuff. And even though he himself stopped playing the game within the next few months, sadly, I stuck around because I had become comfortable with the game environment at that point, thanks to both his guidance and the lack of guidance. I wasn't told the best meta. I had the chance to gradually figure things out on my own and make mistakes, to the point where I actually got kicked out of Liberty and went to chill with the Outcast, but that's another story altogether. So it was an interesting experience which ultimately made me stick around for years. Okay, so what's the point of this video, you might ask? Nostalgia for a simpler disco, one which was still mysterious for me in 2007 is obviously one of the reasons, but thinking on this topic in general made me realize that perhaps in the end, the thing that makes Disco interesting for a new player to stick around, especially in a multiplayer environment in general, is someone to play with, and for me personally, also the sense of accomplishment and growth. I think that anyone can follow a checkbox, or a video tutorial, or a written tutorial, but simply doing something that is considering the meta without actually experiencing something to compare that meta with is genuinely dull. And the existing, or rather the surviving player base of Disco needs to remember that there's that certain sense of progression and achievement that must be kept alive even though we are trying to make the game more approachable or more intuitive for new players. But in the end, the content that really matters for Disco are the players themselves. And as we're leaving the 20-teens behind, perhaps it is time for a bit of a reflection on that. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Anyway, thanks for joining me on this little video. How did you experience Disco back in the day? Write in the comments, I'm genuinely curious, I will read it. And without trying to sound like a grandpa, if you want to hear anything particular from my newbie days from Disco, comment and suggest the topic. But for now, that's pretty much it. This was Spazzy Dragon, aka Syndromes. Fly safe.